When you go into the gym, yeah, they spot you, but at the end of the day, you have to do the heavy lifting.
Yeah.
There's no matter of money
Yeah.
that's going to help you actually lift that weight.
Yeah.
We were literally just transporting cabbages up country. So I was making more on that little transport side hustle than I was with the actual employment. So
How much would the cabbage make?
let's just say I made my first million then. Focus on your ambitions, focus on your means, focus on your life. Not to say you live in isolation, spend within your personal means and grow those ambitions.
Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Financially Incorrect. I'm your host, Barack, and this is a podcast sponsored by FX. I'd like to first of all just thank everybody who's been watching our podcast for all the support we've gotten so far. We're growing our community now and really enjoying that process. Today we have a really interesting conversation around brand ambassadorship and what that looks like in Kenya and what the financials of that are all about. And so the guest that we have today is none other than Mulunda Kombo, who's the brand ambassador for Glenfiddich. Did I get that right?
Thank you. You said it correctly,
yeah.
so I'm happy.
So we can start there. Yeah. So he's the brand ambassador for them, and he's also in the culinary space. He's a restaurateur to some degree, or consulting restaurateur. Yeah.
Food entrepreneur, whatever you want
Yes,
to call it.
food entrepreneur. So lots of things to talk about in that space.
Absolutely.
Is there anything I haven't said about you that
There's
you'd want to?
plenty, but I'm pretty sure we'll manage to fill out the gaps
One way or another,
yeah.
So actually, before we start, the first thing that I want to do is we got this really interesting comment on the episode that we did with Dr. Rain.
Okay.
And I want to ask you your opinion on this, right? So this guy called, or rather his handle is WEIS6ST. I don't know how to say that. But anyway, his comment is people have the wrong conception about education. Education is not meant to make you money or get you rich. When applied well, education is meant to save you from losing the little money you make from many other means. Becoming rich has never been about education. If you want to be rich, look for money. Money and education are not mutually exclusive. When you start looking for money, you'll realize that you'll do what it takes to make money and you will find it. It's that simple.
Oh, wow. A lot of layers to unpack there. Yeah. I think I agree with it on certain levels.
Yeah.
Definitely when we're talking about education and your approach to earning an income.
Yeah.
If that was the case, then we would immediately start with finance classes at the lowest level of education, at entry levels. But we don't. We start about learning about critical thinking and the likes, being educated in how to talk to people.
Yeah.
So languages.
Yeah.
Being educated on the base topics, math, English, all of those things. And then you eventually graduate to what it means to be employed. And that comes much later on in life, well into your third level of education or into your first job, sometimes not even then.
Yeah.
So I think interacting with different individuals for that period of time, which is school, getting an education at home from your parents, your siblings. I have a lot of older siblings. So big chunk of what I've learned in life has actually come from home as well as school. So it's a healthy balance between the two. And all of this then now can be applied and you can develop wisdom around whatever you've built in school, whatever knowledge you've gained. You need to have the wisdom to apply it in the correct way. You know, the smallest inconsistency, the smallest weakness, you poke at it, it can absolutely crumble anything, a wall, a building, whatever. That's the same for your finances. If there's a hole where you do not apply the right amount of time or wisdom, it doesn't matter how much you're earning, you're going to lose.
Okay, I have a couple of questions I want to ask you, basically. Response. The first being, so, and I know I'll ask you a bit more about your background, so we'll get that information, but based on how you grew up, the education that you went through and that whole system, what do you think you are being set up for in terms of the ability to make money? And then two, in terms of financial literacy, do you then think that, you know, the same way that we are introduced to science or math, that financial literacy ought to be introduced earlier in our levels of education? And shout out to FX for their financial literacy classes. You should check them out.
I think it should be introduced significantly earlier in your academic career because you need to be comfortable with it. I think it's become taboo to talk about money in a lot of different spaces, but money is everywhere. and we need to be able to access it, talk about it, get comfortable with it, so that we don't feel this absolute, I don't even know what to describe it as. I've already said the word taboo, or this elephant in the room. You know, maybe you have more money than me, maybe I have more money than you. We shouldn't necessarily need to talk about it in that sense, but how to access it, how to save it, how to grow it needs to be conversations that need to start at an early. We're talking about in kindergarten. If so-and-so has how many sweets, why are we doing that? That's purely for math, but that can be easily morphed or translated into a financial weaning and training of math into finances. You know, I absolutely believe we can start at an earlier time.
Yeah. So, and I guess in line with the education thing, I'd say then we are socialized, or we're sort of headed from the moment that you start going to school. You're put in the education line, and not necessarily how are you going to make money. And so I think then you draw an inadvertent conclusion between education and the money that you make.
Absolutely.
When I guess, as this guy was making his comment, that's not necessarily, they don't necessarily have to go together all the time.
100%. I mean, back then when I was much, much, much younger, I'm not that old, I don't know why I said it that way. But I think I knew, my family knew, my parents knew that I was going to go into the medical field, right? So that was the plan. Sciences was the way to go. Math was the way to go. But even if I had gone down that line, I think I segued a number of times and ended up at psychology. Even then, if I had taken a loan to pay my way through school, why should I be educated about it or find out about the consequences of taking loans and how to manage repayments after the loan has already been taken? You know, I need to be able to weigh up the consequences, the pros and cons of taking a loan to further my education. So going back to our initial conversation, I think we need to be able to have access to financial literacy at the point where we're able to make decisions for ourselves, which is likely, which courses are you going to study? So you need to be able to know, this is potentially what I would make in this line of this field, X field, whatever field, you'll be able to earn this amount of money. So if you have that outlay spread out in front of you, the pros and cons of financial, the financial institutions have to play, then you're in a much better position to make decisions for yourself, meaningful decisions, and not suffer this thing of, I know so many doctors don't end up furthering their education because they can't afford to. You know, so they drop out after couple of years in med school, but it's too expensive. Engineers, the same thing. You know, when I was in school, science courses in the UK were the most expensive courses. They were almost 3 times that of engineering courses. And I was going into the medical field. So that was ridiculous. If my parents weren't able to do that, would I have made that decision for them? But that's their financial planning, not mine. But should I be a part of it? I could have been if I had been introduced
into the concept beforehand.
Exactly.
Okay. So let's, I guess, segue into your actual financial journey. Right?
All right.
So what's your first conscious memory of money?
Jeez.
Could be as young as 3.
I mean, I'm the 8th of 10 children.
Okay.
So
8th of 10 children.
Yeah, 7 boys, 3 girls. And we've always had this system where the sibling above you takes care of the sibling below financially. So my sister above me would...
You guys are like a soccer team.
Yeah, right? We're just missing
like
one.
have your mom in goal, have your dad like on the line.
We're good.
Like, so.
We're good. We're absolutely good. So that's why I said I learned a lot from my older siblings, some of who are into their mid-50s. So I've had a wealth of knowledge to tap into, their experiences. They've gone to school abroad in different countries, the US, Switzerland, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm really grateful that I have access to that knowledge and their experiences. But yeah, so the first experience probably was much later on in life, where I was given the opportunity to actually start managing my younger brother's finances.
Okay.
So giving him his pocket money, paying for his school fees, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay.
And that's something that my dad used to always put into place. You know, take care of your younger sibling. If they don't have pocket money, it's on you.
So at what age do you take on these responsibilities?
That would have been 16, 17. Yeah.
16, 17, you're giving your little brother or little sibling their pocket money. And where are you getting the money to do that?
From my parents. So I'm managing my younger siblings' access to money.
Okay. Also, the source of the funds is still your parents, but then they're telling you, manage. So do you then decide how much you're giving him? Or?
No. That's already been predetermined. I think there would be a lot of
politics.
A lot of politics. In
so it's literally just managing money, ensuring that you use money for what it's supposed to be for.
Absolutely. At that time, you can go to the bank, withdraw money, deposit it into another account. We were doing international transactions at that point, so it educated me on how to be able to do that. So that was something that has stuck with me for a very long time.
Okay. Yeah. What about, like, I guess maybe potentially a little younger, but when you sort of understand that money is a concept and you know, and a way of being able to do things in this world?
Okay, I went to boarding school pretty early.
Okay.
We weren't actually allowed to handle money because it brought on a number of problems, theft and whatnot.
Yeah.
But the currency in boarding school was obviously sweets.
Yes.
Right?
And all these other snacks.
Yes.
Yeah.
Some were contraband, others you could get regularly from the
And by contraband,
shop.
you mean?
So contraband basically meant any type of sweet that you couldn't access from the little canteen shop that was on campus. So people would be able to bring, or not be able, they would bring those on. And those obviously were worth more. You know, we're talking about not the goody and eclair types, something like a chupa chup or something that's imported sweets. Right. So those were more valuable. And your parents were the ones who governed how much money was put into your account and how many sweets you were then able to buy. And people started bartering with their little bags. We literally had bags of sweets. It started off as a standardized basically offering. So if it's 500 bob, you're given 5 goody, 4 eclairs, etc., etc. But you could only eat these once a week. So if I eat all of them in week 1, I have nothing to go on until the next month.
Yeah.
So now people started trading, bringing contraband to offset and maybe buy back. It became a nice little internal barter system.
Yeah.
So understanding that my parents had control about how much I could actually have access to in sweets became very aware to me. Like, why does he have a stack of goodies and I have 2?
Yeah,
you know, that kind of thing.
Because someone somewhere has paid for more, put in more in his account.
Exactly.
To allow for him to have more sweets than you.
So it wasn't the actual hard currency, but it was the value
barter trade essentially.
Yeah.
And you mentioned Molo. Last week we had a guest who also went to a school in Molo. Might it be St. Andrew's Uturi?
It was. It was.
I know. I want you to, because last week we had this conversation with Steve about helicopters at St. Andrew's Uturi.
Yeah.
Myth or?
That was an absolute fact. It was something that was bizarre to experience because I went to it in a completely different time. We're talking about in my mid-30s, late 30s, now. So we're talking about over 22, 23 years ago. That was a long time ago. The roads between Nairobi and Nakuru were nowhere nearly as good as they were. But yeah, there were those people who would land in helicopters or fixed-wing planes. Those were not us. Those were not us. But there were those that did.
But there were people who had that experience.
Absolutely.
What does that, I mean, if you're in school with someone who's coming in on a chopper, what impact does it have on you, or does it make you feel?
Luckily, I was friends with the people that were coming in the choppers, so I could at least go and have a look around it. Not fly around in it, but just say, hey, I touched a chopper.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
But at that age, I think the focus is more about your friendships, you know, building a community around yourself because you are away from home. I went to school out there when I was 6 years old. You know, I don't think a lot of people who are now going to those types of schools would send their children at that age. That's pretty young. And at that time, there were people who were going at age 4. You know, that's super young.
Yeah.
So you're not really thinking about money in that way.
Yeah.
You're thinking about who am I going to hang around with? Who's going to be my buddy that I can share secrets, which crush I have or whatever it may be. And for me, it was sports. I was a much bigger kid than a lot of guys, so I focused a lot on that. So it didn't really affect me as much then. I think it became apparent on visiting days. That's when it became super apparent. When you see the types of vehicles that are coming in, and you're just like, wow, wow, this is different.
Did that ever have any consequence on your ambition or what you want or the money you wanted to make in your life?
Absolutely.
Coming after,
absolutely. I think it affected me in more, not necessarily my ambition, but it set now the minimum expectation. So this is what I have to do. If I went to this type of school, I need to be able to at least return the favor to my children or to my grandchildren or whatever, whomever. So it said, like, you got to do it. You got to do it. I'm not saying that I needed to drive a certain type of car. I just needed to...
You want to be able to afford the lifestyle.
Yeah.
So what then, how does that help you, or how does that help you decide your career path from there? Because I'm assuming now you got out from high school and...
It's a little bit different for me because I saw that you had interviewed Biko Adema.
Yes.
That was your first episode.
That was the first episode, yeah.
We share a passion for rugby, and at some point I knew that rugby was going to be my career.
Okay.
So went to the right schools, got recruited by the right clubs in South Africa, unfortunately got injured. So that completely...
While you were down there? Or?
While I was in South Africa, yeah. So a couple of surgeries later, I was unable to carry on playing rugby. So for
How old were you at this point?
We're talking from 18, 19 into early to mid 20s.
Okay.
Yeah. So for that period of time, sports was it. I then had to recalibrate, refocus my energy to education. And even when I was in rehab and recuperating from the injuries, what I wanted to study was still in line with sports. So I wanted to go and do psychology and ergonomics. I mean, if you've ever spoken to anyone who's played rugby in South Africa, it is intense. Even at a schoolboy level, it is super intense. We had to go see a psychologist once a week after our games, just to make sure that our mental state is good to go.
Check, right?
Yeah, checking up on our classwork, etc., etc. I think it's that stereotypical approach that you see on TV when you think American football, high school, that kind of thing, but multiply that by a factor of maybe 6 or 7. It was hectic. But even still, I wanted to be able to counsel anyone who has either gotten a catastrophic injury, maybe head trauma, torn ACLs and are not able to continue their careers, and that even segued or would have had parallel applications to people who lose limbs in any matter of way, and designing and developing technology for amputees. So that's where I wanted to be. That's the space that I wanted to go into. It was still very much in line with rugby,
sports.
With sports. And even at that point, I wasn't looking at it as a means of making money. It was a passion. It was something that I really loved and I really believed in. And that was what was accessible to me at that time. So, like I said, it's a bit different for me because passion has been a driving factor for the careers that I have found myself in, and there have been multiple.
Okay. So that seems like it was the first one. If I may ask, if you're to try and calculate, look at the investment that had been made for you to even potentially pursue rugby as a profession, what are we looking at there?
Is this starting back from Molo? Or
I guess where does it start? I guess does it then start in Molo? Does it start?
It probably starts in South Africa.
Okay.
And that's where I was doing my A-levels. So it's in the millions. It's in the millions, considering you have to factor in flights, you know. If I'm not coming home for holidays, where am I staying? Am I getting an apartment with my friends? Luckily, I had a lot of Kenyan friends who I was actually in school with. So we went over at the same time. So we would be able to share accommodation and basically just spread out the cost for our parents. So it well into the millions.
So by the time, and are your parents part of this conversation in terms of them directly agreeing or accepting to invest in your rugby career, or was it something that just happened?
I think for the longest time, they supported my sporting achievements because it was quite evident that I had a natural inclination towards sports. It didn't matter what it was. Rugby was my passion, yes, but I played absolutely every single one. Sprinting, cross country, javelin, discus, shot put, football, basketball, swimming, cross country, cricket, hockey, all of it. So if you backtrack a little bit, yeah, my mom invested a lot buying me the right equipment. I remember before I went out to touring, we were, well, I wasn't. I think it was my mom was sewing in labels in my clothes. And we were watching a game of cricket because at that time cricket was compulsory. And she said, "Are you ready to play this game?" I was like, "I have no idea what is going on, but sure." Got there first time at the age of 6 or 7 playing cricket, and naturally was able to play cricket from the age of 6. Played it all the way till I was recruited by, what was his name? Sudi. Kenya. Didn't end up playing for Kenya, but went for the tryouts, was called back, and I chose rugby over cricket. Yeah, so she really invested her time coming to support me at games. When I get injured, I've had so many different injuries, so paying hospital bills to build me up, from cracked kneecaps to broken ribs and all manner of injuries, concussions. It's been crazy. So she's invested beyond the monetary investment. She's invested a lot of time and understanding. And I think that was for these athletics, the athletes rather, are amongst us. That's something that a lot of people don't have. You can't necessarily invest monetarily into somebody's passion. Their drive to do something physical, you can only support them. When you go into the gym, they spot you, but at the end of the day, you have to do the heavy lifting. There's no matter of money that's going to help you actually lift that weight. You know? Unless you're juice or something like that. I don't know.
So as your sort of rugby career, because of the injury, sort of goes up in flames, do you at any point in time have consideration of, gosh, my parents have spent millions of this, I've spent millions of this, you know, by extension, and now this is not something that's going to be my career anymore?
100%. I did go through a bout of depression because of what the hell am I going to do next? I need to then reset, go back. I've missed out on years that I could have been building my academic career, and then now fortify that. My peers are now moving on, or have well moved on, because they just went straight through their academic careers. So I had lost time. So in that time, you get depressed, you get anxious, you're seeing people graduating and you're still there. Now you're having to come back and do it. Previously I had friends and peers, now I have no one. I have to start making friends again. They're younger than I am, so it was awkward, it was weird. So I did have a lot of those feelings, but here we are.
Okay. So what happens next in your money journey in that sense? So what happens next? Where do you go?
All right. From there, we came back to Nairobi. I came back to Nairobi, and at that time, went straight into a completely different walk of life, which was construction management. So my parents had some construction projects going on at that time. My dad was in politics. My mom was working in the financial space. She's like math genius, accounting guru type person. So very good with numbers. So I stepped into that role because my siblings were now starting out with their families. They had young children. They couldn't commit as much time to running around to different construction sites. So I did that for a good maybe 4 years. Which found myself being hired by a project management firm.
And within this, before you get into the construction management, do you have a construction management degree? Do you have a construction management qualification?
Absolutely not.
You walk. Well, I guess you're managing a family project, and so you're
it wasn't
learning the ropes
necessary.
on the way. Okay. And what's then the salary conversation like?
Well, at that time, I was still living in my parents' house, so there wasn't a salary. I had 3 square meals a day, so that was payment enough. I had a roof over my head, so that was my bonus. Access to a vehicle at least to take me back and forth. So there wasn't any remuneration of sorts at that time.
So how are you surviving? I'm assuming you're socializing,
savings,
with friends. Your savings.
savings from pocket money
Yeah.
that my parents had given me through school. Obviously, when you're in boarding or when you're in a place where you don't necessarily have to spend money, you can save. So there was a little bit of savings from that I used on there. And yeah, I won't lie, my mom used to slip me a couple of thousand at that time and just say, do that. But I think the real change up was when the owner of the construction company would come onto site and we would have conversations. I could articulate certain issues in a way that was understandable. My emails were well worded. The queries, again, my mom, very analytic and critical thinker. That training that I've received from her by just being her son, applied on the job to this construction. And he was like, would you like a job? And I said, yes, please. And that was the change up. And from one of those projects, I then became a marketer, selling off the units, getting commissions from that, which put me into now the property management, not construction management, but property management. And, yeah, so it was just, I feel like I was in an episode of, was it an episode? The movie. Have you watched Slumdog Millionaire?
Yes, yes.
Literally just the sum
One thing
total of
leading
your
to the
life
next.
leading into another, into another. And literally, I can track it, and that has been every step of my life till date.
So construction management, the job that you're getting, what's the offer on the table?
At that time,
Yeah.
it was 45,000 shillings.
5,000 a month,
Yeah.
right? And this is gross.
Yeah.
And so now you're getting your 45,000 a month. What are you doing with that 45,000? Are you?
The first couple,
Yeah.
completely gone within a week or two. Blowing off steam, whatever steam I had to blow off at that time. I don't even recall anything substantial, doing anything substantial from then.
The first couple salaries?
Nah, not at all.
Yeah.
Not at all. We were rubbish.
Okay, so after the first couple have come and gone, burnt through, what's then your, I guess, money policy, or what begins to become your money policy?
The money policy at that time was to supplement it.
Okay.
Right. So I had a friend at the time, still a good friend, who had a knack for business. So we were doing all kinds of little wheeler dealer things on the side. I remember he got a 60,000 shilling loan, and we were literally just transporting cabbages up country. So I was making more on that little transport side hustle than I was with the actual employment. So
How much would the cabbage make?
Let's just say I made my first million then. Yeah.
Through the transportation of cabbages up country.
Yeah, we had no office. We just collected the little chits from loading, passed them on to the farmers, and that was it. We get paid.
And so who's paying you? Is it the farmers?
So we were basically leasing
Okay.
the trucks.
Yeah, I see.
And then we collect from the farmer, deposit them at the end user, which is a supermarket or whomever that end user, a processor, whomever that might be.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so that's how you make your first. That's how you make your first million.
Yeah.
Anything else that you're doing at that time?
Construction management.
So the construction management and the cabbage stuff.
Yeah.
And how are you spending your money at this point, or what are you doing with your money?
At that time, now the 45, completely using that to operate. And let me remind you, I didn't have a lot of operational costs.
Yeah, because you're still at home.
Yeah, so it was a young man's game. So at this point, we're what, 23, 24? 23? Something like that. I can't even remember. And we basically did whatever we wanted.
Yeah.
There was no strategy. There was no saving plan. It was all literally flying out.
Like it comes in and it goes.
Yeah.
Entertainment, is it partying, is it food, is it dates?
It's entertainment.
Yeah.
Bought a vehicle later, but that was not necessarily from any one point of income. You'd have accounts, and they're current accounts.
Yeah.
Why were they current accounts? I don't know.
Yeah.
Why weren't they savings accounts?
Yeah.
Again, I didn't have, nobody had told me, when you get to this amount of money, you need to do this. I had absolutely no guidance on that.
Yeah.
Like I had said earlier, money was this taboo thing, this elephant in the room that you don't want to talk, you don't want to come off as being arrogant by talking about money. And so you want to maintain some humility of some sort. I don't know what it was, but nobody was really talking about it.
When you look back now, when you think about your, I guess your current account, what's a ludicrous amount of money that you had in your current account, which right now you do different things with?
I don't know whether I can answer that question. I don't know. I don't know whether I can answer that question. What I will say, no, I cannot say that either.
Yeah.
There have been ludicrous amounts. I wish I had access to someone like this institution, you know, where I could put it somewhere. There are people who can manage it on my behalf and guide me on this journey, when to divest, invest, whatever. I wish I had done that. I wish I had bought bonds at that time when they were so accessible and cheap, to be honest, and they were performing very well. I wish I had done all of those things.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So how long does the cabbages and construction management last for?
I would say a good 2 to 3 years.
2 to 3 years.
Yeah.
Okay.
2 to 3 years.
Does the construction management salary increase?
Oh yeah, it increases. Yeah. It increases. I still have that company. It's still running to date. And we're talking about, 12, 15 years later. It is still running. Yeah.
So, because I'm assuming at this point you're still being employed by this guy who you're working for.
In those 3 to 4 years?
Yeah, those 3 to 4 years.
Yeah. So I actually, good Lord, it's showing my age.
Yeah.
The first contract, the first property that we developed in my full-time employment was actually Galleria. Yeah, so we were I was part of the project management team for Galleria. So that's when my journey really started. So I worked with him from concept all the way to finishing that construction. Places like Greenspan, worked on that. So some big property development projects.
What are pay scales for people in construction management
At that time?
At that time, and if you have, I guess, insight on what it is now.
I don't, because I do, yes. At that time, yes, I was earning about 45,000.
Yeah.
This would be as a clerk of works type role.
Okay.
Which is basically supervisory. It was anywhere between 45 and 55,000, maybe up until 60 if you've been working with a company for quite a bit of time. Now, a good clerk of works would be about 120,000.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then what are the different, so I guess if I'm to say this is going to be my career, this is how I'm going to make money, what are the different positions that would then be available to me in terms of that career path? And then what are the amounts of money that then I'd be looking to earn with those specific places?
I think now it's completely dependent on the type of construction company you're working for.
Okay.
I think from this side, the base, what we're talking about, what you're asking, you would start at maybe about 80, entry level, and work your way up until whatever, depending on your role. Are you the clerk of works? Are you a civil engineer? What qualifications are you building on top of that? With the clerk of works, you didn't necessarily have to have that much of education. You just needed to know this is the job that needs to be done. You're managing the subcontractors. You're managing the guys who are laying pipes. You're managing the masons. You're managing all manner of different people. So if you have any additional qualifications, so you have a civil engineering degree, you have any kind of qualification, obviously you're going to be earning more. And I think nowadays we have this ability to negotiate. It's super important. I moved away from that world quite a while ago, so it's purely just managing the properties 100%. We haven't actually, the company hasn't constructed any property for the last 6 years. Management is the forte. That other side, that's where I left it at. Okay. So I would be at fault or remiss if I said categorically what it was. It wouldn't be up to date figures. Okay.
But what about then the commissions? Because you said now when you move from the project management to from the project management to now the
construction management,
project management. You also get a commission off of sales. So what kind of commissions are people talking about?
We're talking anywhere from 6 to at that time, about 6 to 10%.
Yeah.
Depending on whether you're registered. So if you're registered, you can earn anywhere until 12%. Right? If you're unregistered, which is a lot of now agents, they will be earning about 5-6%.
And this is a commission on rent or
On sale.
or sale,
yeah.
not rent.
So rent you would get commission from a listing. So
Okay.
once you have somebody move into that property, you could get either 1 month or 2 months rent.
Okay.
Yeah. Depending on how the tenant would be paying. If they're paying annually, you can negotiate on that and now come back to those percentages, which again is anywhere 5-6%, all the way up until 12.
All right.
Yeah.
How difficult is it to get people to buy property so that you can get that commission?
It's difficult. It's
Yeah.
difficult, and you need to then have. It's a numbers game. You need to have as many properties on the go. You need to have a good pair of shoes. You need to have patience because people will string you along. They consistently say yes, yes. Start the process. Even if it's a rental property, they'll say, "Yeah, love it, love it, love it, love it, love it." You do all the hard work. And then they pull out at the last minute. It's exhausting, it's frustrating, it's infuriating. So you have to do a hell of a lot. Keeping, let's say, a minimum threshold of listings is how you win. Yeah? And then diversifying the type of listings that you have, also a winning formula.
Yeah. Do you remember your first sale?
I do.
I
do.
Tell us about that process. Yeah.
I'll be honest with you.
Yeah.
It was surreal
Yeah.
because we're talking about a 110 million property, and you're just waiting for it to flop because you've been trying to sell all these other properties before. It's like, no, it's not gonna happen. It's not gonna happen. You go into escrow, you're like, oh my God, this is actually happening. This is going to happen. They make the tranched payments, and it's like, oh my God. This is really happening. Then they complete payment and your check is cut.
Yeah.
It was surreal. First thing I did, I bought a car and a piece of property. Immediately.
Yeah.
I didn't even see, it was 600,000? I didn't look at that 600,000. I didn't look at the other, I think the car was it 1 million, 1 point something million? Didn't look at it, just bought the cars. Bought the car, bought the property. The balance, put it into a savings account. The rest, yeah.
How long did it take you to get that 110 million sale? How long had you been toiling or just trying to make it
For
happen?
that particular sale?
I guess, for that particular sale.
7 months?
7 months.
Yeah, 6 to 7 months.
So if you had nothing else that you were doing for those 6-7 months,
It would have been a lot more difficult.
Yeah.
Yeah.
there's no food on the table.
There's no food on the table. Yeah.
Okay. So transition from I guess the where you were at that point in terms of the I guess the what do you call it project management
Yeah.
and moving on to I guess your next phase of your life.
Wow. Okay. How much time do we have? From there, I found myself in petrochemicals.
Petrochemicals.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So I ended up working for a company that manufactured pipes and pipe heads for petrochemical pipelines. Yeah. So they were looking to move into Kenya, and again, something that I developed over time. I was, believe it or not, an introvert. Still am to a certain extent, but I developed an ability to talk to people in a certain way. The same way I'd mentioned that the guy who owned the project management company appreciated my ability to communicate, especially with clients. So anything client facing was my forte. So this company was looking to move into Kenya, and I facilitated their move into Kenya, knowing absolutely nothing about petrochemicals. So
How did you even get into contact with a company?
Mutual friends, mutual connections. I had been setting up, good Lord, I had forgotten that I also distributed cement at that time. Still have that company going as well. So that now put us into the same circles. It's not, you're talking about construction management, property management, cement, pipelines, pipe heads, all of those things. And this is where now the tendering processes started coming in, and you get to meet certain people who are working in parallel or horizontally integrated or vertically integrated lines of fields of work.
Yeah.
And that's how I found myself there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So you basically facilitating the process for them to come into Kenya.
Yeah.
They paid you a fee for that.
Yeah.
What kind of I guess if you're charging for that work, what kind of charges are you putting?
I was on retainer.
Okay.
Good Lord. I don't even remember.
Yeah.
I can't remember that
Yeah.
actually.
What the exact fee was.
What the exact fee was of that. I think it was, I'll be guessing.
Yeah.
I would absolutely be guessing.
And I mean, it sounds like you're making money from many different
Channels.
channels. How are you managing all of that in
So
terms of the workload?
quite literally, and a lot of people have asked me this, back then, if you came to my house, you'd see 3 different bags by the door. It's literally, I pick up one bag. One bag is for one line of work. The next bag is for this and this. If it's not in that bag, I'm not touching it. We're not doing it. So that was like how I would work in silos. If that's the best way I can describe it. Compartmentalizing my time and making sure that when you're out there, it's not like you can just dash back home and pick up, change bags so that you're changing gears. No, that whole day is dedicated to this thing.
Okay.
Yeah. So it was a rudimentary form of time management, but it worked for me at that time. It worked.
And at that time, if you were to try and give me an average of some sort, how much would you say you're making at that point from these different businesses?
Maybe, how old was I? That's a better way for me to manage that. So it must have been about 26, 27 at that time. Couple of 100,000, maybe 250 to 300,000. Yeah, a month.
A month, yeah.
Yeah.
And how are you spending that 250? Are you out of home now? How are you spending the 250?
So that's rent,
300,000?
maintaining my car, which I got from sales.
Yeah.
Entertainment. At that time, I don't think I even had a girlfriend at that time, so I was saving. And that's now when I started really saving. I think that's when I started putting money away that was working. My mom was always really good with dividends, buying shares, and no matter how little you're getting something back. At least the money is working for you. So that's a lot of dividends at that time.
So in terms of assets at the time, you have your car, you have your piece of land, and then you've bought a couple of shares, and then you're putting other money, into savings. Yeah. Are you looking at any money market funds at that point, or any bonds?
Not at that point. Not at that point. Like I said, again, people didn't really know about that. It was the older generation that knew about that. I think I only started understanding about that. Guys are lucky now who are in their mid-20s. They have access to all this information. We didn't. 10 years ago, it wasn't, at my age, I would have been, 25? It wouldn't have been something that was known. You'd have to buy the paper, read it, and then immediately understand what that means. There's nobody who's telling you what it means. You're going to the bank, all you're being told is, put this amount of money and you'll get this. You can't pull it out for X amount of years.
Yeah.
What the hell does that mean?
Yeah.
You're being penalized if you want to pull. Nobody's really talking to you in the way that is meaningful.
Yeah.
But again, my mother was a very good source of information.
Yeah.
And that's where I started. You ask her questions.
Yeah.
She always has this running joke, and I feel like she's going to cash in on it. She always says, "I'll send you my fee note." I am waiting for that day because I feel like that fee note is
going to be a good one. And at this point, are you thinking, I need to make more money? I want to make more money. What are your conscious thoughts around money at that point?
At that point?
Yeah, at that point, because you're making 250, 300,000 a month. You have no girlfriend. You're saving. Yeah. You have a car, piece of land.
I will say that I probably rested on my laurels a little bit. Wasn't as hungry as a lot of my peers. And that's now the time we started playing around a lot in tenders. So we became now the tenderpreneurs. That's another channel of making money. At some point we had the contract for cleaning KICC, those types of things. That's when YAGPO was really strong. So this was something that was meant to benefit the youth. What does YAGPO stand for? persons with disability,
Yeah.
women. So we really took advantage of that. And there was a rolling scale. If you're young, under the age of 36, 35, 30, yeah, under the age of 35, a woman, it's literally a percentage marker. So a young disabled woman can overquote on a tender by 30%. Me as a young man, I can overquote by 10%, every marker. So we took advantage of that. It was a fantastic initiative that came out. We had access to small tenders, like providing flowers in offices, newspapers, tires.
And you say we, who's we at this point?
My friend and I, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And my brother, one of my brothers. Yeah. So I would literally be sat in his office and he was showing me the ropes on how to fill out tenders properly, the pitfalls, how people get kicked out, those kinds of things. So we were literally just stacks of papers. It was a nightmare. It was an absolute nightmare, but we were doing it.
How do you, I've never played in the tender space, but I hear that there's quite a few cartels in that space.
A few
So
is
underplaying it.
Yeah.
How do you navigate that space? Because submitting the tender, you have to pay an application fee or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So how do you ensure that your investment, you're going to get back, you're going to want to win the tender?
You got to have the gift of gab and be willing to do the needful. And that's all I'll say, because I think we all speak that language, unfortunately, but it was a sad state.
Is it not possible to get a tender, a big tender, in your opinion, in this country, without, quote unquote, doing the needful?
Yeah, I think it's possible, just in the private sector.
In the private sector?
Yeah.
Nothing, if it's the government.
Listen, I'm not going to knock. There are a lot of people who are above board, but we need to see them do more to weed out the wheat from the chaff, as it were. Yeah.
Does that at all take a toll on your conscience?
It does. It 100% does. We live in a constant state of fear. People, I can guarantee you, when they see a cop on the road, they're not saying like, "Hey, Afande," or anything like that. They're just like, "Damn, do I have my insurance? Are my tires? Is the tread on my tires sorted? Are my windows tinted too dark?" They're fearful. Which is not a good place to be, and that translates across everywhere. You can't get anything done without having to say the right thing or give the right amount of facilitation in order for somebody to do the job.
Does in your mind, when you're submitting tenders, does the ends justify the means?
For me, no. Considering where and how I was brought up, it didn't. I wouldn't say that that's why I got out of that particular game, but sometimes you'd find that a lot of your profit has been eaten up by people that are
having to facilitate the process.
Yeah, and it doesn't make sense. Yeah.
Okay. Maybe, because I don't know how many more industries you've worked in, let me jump
to where we are now.
Let me jump to Glenfiddich. Glenfiddich rather. How does that brand ambassadorship come together?
Okay, passion point that we haven't touched on is that my family were quite into hotels, hotel management. My two oldest brothers went to study in culinary schools and hotel management schools in Switzerland. And I would actually go and spend a lot of time, half terms, mid-terms, whatever, summers, following my brothers around hotels that they were managing. So I was in the back of house. I was in the kitchen a lot. So I got into, subconsciously, I had a passion for food that was untapped. This was from now, back in the day when I was 9, 10, 11, following my brothers who were maybe in their, that time, mid to late 20s, so just shadowing them or causing chaos around them probably was the case, but picking up a lot of things. So when I eventually got injured, I spent a lot of time in hospitals with really crappy hospital food. So all I wanted to do was cook for myself. Tried that out. It was terrible. Kept on trying that out, and it started to develop into something that people wanted. So flash forward to maybe 7 years ago, my sister is chairing a meeting, and there's a lot of chatter. Maybe it was more than 7 years ago, probably about 9 years ago. There's a lot of chatter in the conference room, and she's just like, guys, what's going on? So she says, let me see what you're talking about. So we all discuss it. And she saw that they were going through my Instagram. And I was just posting for my own meals at home. And I was just like, have you seen this guy's food? Oh my God, it's amazing. It's amazing, blah, blah, blah. And she's just like, that's my brother. I'm like, nah, you're lying. You're lying. She called me, like, I'm in a meeting. I need them to come to order. Please let them know who you are and what you're going to be cooking next. She didn't even know that I was doing that. But because she wasn't on social media. But clearly, the people that were in the meeting room, good. And so it's kind of snowballed from there. They encouraged me, my sisters encouraged me to go into private dining and pop-up restaurants, which I did. So now that put me squarely in the crosshairs of the culinary world. Did pop-up restaurants all over Kenya for a while, which were quite successful, which brought me to do a pop-up at a place called the Lake House in Tigoni, yes, for Hendrick's Gin. And Hendrick's is owned by William Grant & Sons, the company that make Glenfiddich. So we did a brunch series out there, and the guys were just like, listen, we love what you're doing, but aren't you a whiskey consumer? So at this point, by the time I'm working with Hendrick's, it's maybe 5 years later, because I've been working for Glenfiddich for now 5 years. Yeah. I said, absolutely. They said, okay, do you mind meeting with our regional director? Because your name has been popping up for the last 2 years. But the industry wanted somebody from one of their own. They wanted somebody who had been working at the Diageos, the EABLs, whatever it was at that time. They wanted somebody who understood the liquor, the spirit world. But one thing I immediately came to understand is that William Grant's don't do things typically. They're mavericks. You know, they're the people who coined the term single malt Scotch whiskey. You know, that's quite significant because that's a term that we all know now. So they said, you know what? We're going to get somebody that has nothing to do with the spirits world, but marches to the beat of their own drum. And they've been doing this. Even my counterparts in the US, one was a thespian. She left the company to do other stuff in the spirit world. There are guys who are DJs. My counterpart in South Africa, he's a DJ. So these are people who have come from absolutely different walks of life. The same way you're doing this podcast, you're picking guys from different. That's the same thing that William Grant's did. So they found me and said, now my forte at that time was food. So they asked me, and here we are. You know, I had no expectations, no idea of what the role was going to entail. I think previously a lot of brand ambassadors, what people understood was that it was sales. So you walk around with, you're basically a rep. You walk around with a truck full or a boot full of your wares, and you go from club to club, flogging your wares, or it was social media, pose for the camera, et cetera, et cetera. But there's a happy balance. I'm not too concerned with sales. I'm more concerned if you thought about what an actual ambassador does for the state. I do this a similar thing. I'm an educator. I am a storyteller. I look for meaningful relationships and partnerships. You know, we look to tap into the zeitgeist of Kenya, cultural touch points, whether it's the arts, whether it's food, whether it's music, fashion, whatever. We want partnerships there. You know, like my clothes are tailor-made by this guy that I've been working with for 5 years. And making sure that we understand what's happening in that field. You know, we have mavericks that I work with who are travel writers, photographers, singers. You know, those kinds of people. I interact with them, tap into their world, and take our product, our story, to those walks of life, those cultural touch points, the people who exist in those cultural touch points.
Okay. And what's the, I guess on a fiduciary level, is that something you can do full time? Is that
100%?
You can be able to live off of being a brand ambassador?
100%. To be honest, I'm actually segueing into doing it.
Okay.
It takes time, given the number of things we've already discussed. It's difficult to. They're not all on autopilot. You know, if I joined you guys, maybe some of the money would just be working for itself as I did this. But yeah, I can definitely do that full time because a lot of people do. So that would
and as a brand ambassador, then how do you make your money?
So my food consultancy company, is on retainer with William Grant and Sons. So I'm a consultant for them.
Okay.
So that's on a part-time basis.
Okay.
Right. So in order for me to then transition, that would mean me taking on a full-time role, and I would be an employee of William Grant and Sons.
Okay.
Which
But technically, as a brand ambassador, you're not paid to be a brand ambassador.
I am paid to be a brand ambassador.
So you're paid to be a brand ambassador, and then
I'm paid through my company, my consulting.
Okay. Yeah. So, but is it a tripartite deal then, or is it?
No.
Yeah.
Because I am the owner of my consulting company,
right?
And it's coming directly from William Grant.
So within this contractual agreement that you have, it's one to be the brand ambassador, two to then be a consultant for them as well.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So right now you have that going.
Yeah.
Any other ventures?
Yeah, 100%. I think I'm not going to say a lot of them.
Yeah.
But within the food scape, I consult for a lot of bars and restaurants and hotels. So anything from concept, design, execution, training, recruiting and training of staff, menu development, menu execution. I do all of that. So if you have an idea for a restaurant, you come to me and my team, and we make it work for you.
Okay. Yeah. What's the best investment you've made so far?
Ooh.
And by best here, I'd like you to qualify it by, I guess, return.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
That's a good question. It's probably going to be a certain bond that I'm not going to give all the details of that. Yeah, but a certain
maybe
bond
you could give us
performed.
in terms of percentages of how much you got back. Yeah.
Within a year and a half to 2 years, 20% on top of what my initial, which is
it's really good.
Yeah, pretty good.
Okay.
Yeah.
As we wrap up, allow me to talk about this or ask you about this a little bit about, I guess, growing up in some sort of privilege, and what that does for you from a financial perspective, of course, and in your perception, the doors that potentially opened for you to be able to be the person that you are now.
Okay. I think the most important thing to understand is my upbringing, or rather the values that my parents instilled.
Yeah.
My mom, my dad, they worked super hard in their relative fields.
Yeah.
There would be points where I had gotten to a point where I'm walking into the same room, meeting room, as my mother. Or my company is being put on the table to be considered by my mom or my dad, or whatever it would be. My mom would recuse herself. She'd say, absolutely not. This is my son. I have a vested interest. I cannot. And she would leave. So she has that. She's willing to give me the tools, has always been willing to give me the tools. But in order for me to achieve, I got to work for it myself. They have always been big proponents in hustling it out for yourself, grinding it for yourself, pointing you in the right direction, opening the right doors, albeit a crack, but you put your foot in that door, you make yourself known, and you prove yourself. Yeah? That's been their philosophy. They're not going to give you anything, no handouts. If you take a loan, it's a payment plan, or there's documented, they're not what's the word? Gum with their earnings, or which is theirs. It's their money. It's their hard work that has seen them get to where they are now. But they are practical about what lesson that teaches. So it's been a long, I'm 37 now, a long 37 years of learning from them, learning from my siblings, learning from peers, and learning from all those different walks of life. I can't say categorically that my upbringing alone has contributed to where I am now, but it had a massive role to play. The ability to be either humble, considerate, kind. All of those things are not necessarily words that you'd associate with a working environment.
Yeah.
You know, you think he's aggressive, he's a shark, all of those things. Those are the words that you'd freely associate with a businessman.
Yeah.
But no, I found another way.
Yeah.
I found
to get
another
it done.
way. Yeah.
Maybe a follow-up question on that is, do you think, I guess, for you or people who may be in your position, do you think that it accords you a little bit of a, I don't want to call it a safety net, but like a thought in the back of your mind where it's like, it's really not gonna be that bad. I mean, like if all else fails, it's really not gonna be that bad.
Okay. Yeah, I think at one point that was my mindset, and I needed to violently shift away from that because if I am having my wife, if I'm having my home, if I'm having my kids, I need to think about it at worst case scenario. I need to be able to make sure that they're okay regardless. Yeah? And one of your fallbacks can't be, let me go and ask my parents all the time. It shouldn't be. That should be the absolute last case. And it should be the one where you have to break the glass, the proverbial glass, to get the key, to unlock the door where the key is in a safe where you don't know the combination. And when you figure out the combination, that's when you ask them. That's how far I feel it should have to go.
Yeah.
And shifting away from that mindset, the mindset is really important.
Yeah.
Nurturing relationships, making sure that people see you in a way that is respectable, is something that has opened so many doors for me. Like I said, being kind, being thoughtful, being all of these things, being a gentleman, you know, those are the things that have enriched my ability to do business, because what does that mean? It means I'm trustworthy. People want to come back and engage with me. People trust me to take their product to the world. Look, think of it this way. Glenfiddich, me being a brand ambassador, yes, I'm one of hundreds around the world, but this is a company that has been in existence for 136 years. And they entrust you with their legacy on a day-to-day basis. That is only something that can come from a respect that is earned, something that has been generated through all these walks of life. Yes, I'm not knocking anyone who has a long-standing career, but how you choose to manage yourself, the same way you're managing your funds, becomes equally as important. Right? All the money in the world, don't be a dick. Sorry. Sorry.
Simply put.
Yeah.
Okay, two more questions. And this one, again, it may sound like I'm sort of like putting my nail on this a little bit, but you know, hopefully you don't take offense. You know how in the Matrix movie, before Neo makes a decision, he's given like a red pill and a blue pill. He's like, which one do you want to take?
Okay.
I guess in a vacuum, take that and say, fine. So in one hand, I'm giving you the life that you have lived, the life that you were born into, and you know, with the privilege that you did have and everything you're able to build. And in the other hand, I'm telling you, here's the ability to experience a different kind of life, where you're not sort of, you know, coming from the same privilege that you have. What option do you think you take? Again, this is in a complete vacuum, of course, can never happen.
Okay. I think I would take the latter, to be honest, because nothing about what we've discussed or what I've told you about my experiences has been planned.
Yeah.
Right. A lot of the time, I haven't been able to see beyond 6 or 7 years. I can't say that I'm in this career and I'm going to be there for this amount of time. There's some kind of circumstance that occurs that rips me away from that trajectory. So, a big lesson that I have taken away, and an ability that I now have, is adaptability. So, I would love to believe that in a vacuum, that was something that is innately programmed into my DNA.
That you'd still find a way to figure it out.
a way to figure it out, yeah.
One way or another.
Yeah.
Okay. Last question. Sorry, excuse me. So I guess as we sort of wind up and want to talk about what's your biggest, I guess, money principle that you feel like you've lived by, and I guess what you'd love to continue living by.
Immediately, the one that popped into my head, but it's not necessarily mine, is I think we've heard it a lot, is live within your means. But then things happen, right? And you could have a night out, or you could have an accident. You could have things that put you in a position to spend outside of your means. I think the biggest thing, and I was having a conversation with someone actually on Saturday about comparing yourselves to your peers. The biggest thing about my spend is it's my spend, right? If I'm able to go on holiday, have a roof over my head, have a meal, have a nice whiskey, put clothes on my back, that is the basis of my finances. I live in that vacuum. That's my little bubble, and maybe GOK and the dollar. You know, those also tap in.
Right.
But it is mine. Do not compare yourself to somebody else.
Yeah.
You said you had Steve Kimingi on last week. We went to the same school, but in no shape or form are we the exact same person.
Yeah.
He's in a completely different field with a completely different set of ideals and expectations and ambitions.
Yeah.
Focus on your ambitions. Focus on your means. Focus on your life. Not to say you live in isolation, spend within your personal means, and grow those ambitions, grow those goals, and always have goals. I think a lot of the time I rested on my laurels. I need to be aggressive in making sure that I have goals. If I achieve one, what's replacing that goal? Where next? Where am I going next? You need to have that tenacity. Same way a coin comes in, it's going to go out. But you want the checks and balances, obviously, to be on, favoring the side where it's coming in. So what are you going to do? There are those who work harder to earn more, and there are those who spend less. Which side of the coin are you? And let me tell you, there are different seasons. In January, I'll be spending different than I would be in July, than I will be in December. Plan. The calendar is there for a reason. You can have different accounts for different reasons. So compartmentalize your spend and stick to it. Stick to it. If there's an account, like I said, with the key to the parents, forget about it. Forget about it, and then, if you can, I think if you can forget about an account, or condition yourself to forget about an account, treat that as your parents.
You should be fine.
You should be
okay. Last question. What does failure look like for you in terms in a monetary sense? Towards the end of your life, what would failure look like?
Here's the thing, Barrett. I failed a lot in life, so I'm no stranger to failure. So I'm not scared of it. But that's not even something that I've explored. Because, again, going back to that tenacious attitude, that hunger to not succeed necessarily financially, but to succeed in a way that I feel fulfilled, is going to negate any future feelings of failure. So that's why I'm saying you live for now. Live in your world that is now. Make sure that your values are taken care of. Make sure that you are comfortable in how you feel, that you're not comparing yourself to somebody else. Be curious. I'm curious in the sense of even just coming and sitting here. I've never spoken this openly about finances. I think she was asking me, I can find nothing about you on the internet that would be on food and Glenfiddich. Yeah, there's a reason for that. But be curious. I'm here out of curiosity. I'm going to schedule an appointment right here to open an account and carry on. See what that does for me. So with all these systems in place, we are not necessarily set up for failure. We have all the tools that we need. And I love the fact that you guys are looking to educate 1 million people.
By the end of this year.
Wherever you've reached, add +1, because I'm constantly learning. The same way my career has constantly been evolving, I'm constantly learning. And the dream, the fear then, would be that I did not invest enough of my time to finding a way to be financially comfortable at the end of the days. I didn't do everything I could within reason, within my within my realm of values, and that would allow me to live a financially stable life to its end. There's so much information. There's so many people that we can reach out to in terms of financial literacy, including yourself, yourselves.
FX
Pesa. You know, these are the things. It's the outlook. The outlook is positive at this point in life.
Okay. That was something. That was something. I think I've learned a little bit about, I guess, really living life and allowing for you to get into the next phase of life based on what you're working on right now, and not necessarily, I guess they say life's not linear, right?
No.
Yeah, so I think I've really picked that up from this podcast session.
Yeah, I was trying hard to
yeah.
stay away from hard finance because
Yeah.
it's so much more than that.
Yeah, yeah.
much
It's a lot more than just a figure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, thanks for listening, guys. Those who got to the end of this podcast. This was a good episode. We will see you guys next time. Remember to like and subscribe, and please leave a comment if you've enjoyed this, and we'll see you next time.